In her words from Dreaming the Dark, Starhawk paints an image of community that resonates with many of us. That place where we can be who we really are and have others celebrate our presence. The phrase that always gets me is eyes that light up when we enter. I hope we've all had that experience of entering a room and seeing someone's eyes light up. And I hope we've all given that experience to someone else. A place where we can be free. Congregations can be those places. And that's what most people are seeking when they come to a religious community. They're looking for a community. The Unitarian Universalist Association's Commission on Appraisal report on membership puts it this way. People seek out a congregation because they need a place to belong, to be rooted, to work out questions of value and meaning, to have a spiritual life. Okay, Commission on Appraisal. Who are these guys and why am I quoting them this morning? The Commission on Appraisal is a denominational body, sort of a think tank, if you will. Their description and the existence of a Commission on Appraisal is in the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws. The association has to have one, it's in the bylaws. And their description, according to the bylaws, goes like this. The Commission on Appraisal shall consist of 9 elected members and shall A, review any function or activity of the association which in its judgment will benefit from an independent review and report its conclusions to a regular General Assembly. B, study and suggest approaches to issues which may be of concern to the association, and C, report to a regular General Assembly at least once every 4 years on the program and accomplishments of the association. So the Commission on Appraisal is basically supposed to think about things that matter and then tell us what they think. It's always working on some issue or other, and about every 4 years it completes a study and presents it to the General Assembly, and the reports are also printed and available to congregations. Now, I love the language of this charge, to review any function or activity of the association which in its judgment will benefit from an independent review, and to study and suggest approaches to issues which may be of concern to the association. That is a very broad charge. It reminds me a little bit of the last job description my husband had when he was a very sort of unofficial senior scientist with the Energy Institute at Penn State. His letter of agreement read, and I quote, "Do research on whatever you want and talk to people." Nice work if you can get it. Given how broad we are as a religious movement, the issues that are of concern to the association could be just about anything. But in fact, the Commission does tend to focus in on big, significant issues that most of us would recognize as being sort of core issues for Unitarian Universalism. In the past years, they have wrestled with our denomination's struggle for racial justice, with the meaning of congregational polity, the way our congregations are governed, with our theological diversity, and with the quality of religious life in our congregations. And in 2001, on the meaning of membership. Now, my focus this morning isn't really on membership, at least not the official sign on the dotted line, now you can vote at the annual meeting kind of membership. I want to talk more about belonging, that sense of belonging that we all need, and how we find it in communities like this one. But the Commission's report on membership lifted up an issue that I think is critical for any conversation about belonging in our congregations. And that's the question of how we strike a balance between the individual and the community. The reading that I shared touches on that issue. But wait, where's the reading? I didn't share it yet. Ah, it's coming up. Sorry, my mistake. The reading I'm about to share touches on that issue. We all want a community that gives us what we need. We don't necessarily always want to think about what the community needs from us. And there's a delicate balance there between our needs, the needs of the community. Sometimes they mesh very nicely, sometimes they don't. Listen to this from the Commission's report. It's a bit of a contrast, I'll just warn you right up front, with Starhawk's idyllic vision of community. The commission writes, "But magic cannot create the warm, fuzzy ideal that most people associate with community. Real community can only be built through hard and unglamorous work. Like any effective relationship, it requires commitment. Often these days, we hear people say they are seeking spiritual community, but want nothing to do with organized religion. By the former, spiritual community, they seem to mean a place that will meet their own religious needs. The latter, organized religion, they seem to associate with a place that will make demands on them to support the institution's needs. The reality is that you cannot have one without the other. And part of the church's job is to lead people to the discovery of the spiritual truth that it is only by giving that we receive. Giving not only our money, but ourselves. In other words, only by making a commitment to a community can we hope to build a community." I was really taken with that paragraph, and it struck me as a really good foundation for a sermon. And then I struggled, and I struggled, and I struggled. And whenever a sermon gives me that much trouble, it's very important for me to stop and try to figure out why. And I realized that I was afraid if I really dug into the issues in that paragraph and the tensions between what we need, what we want to receive, and what we're willing to give, it was going to sound like I was scolding you, like I was saying you don't do enough or give enough. And that's not at all what I mean to say. In fact, I think this congregation has an astonishingly high rate of participation from its membership, probably because we're so small that there's nowhere to hide. But I'm lifting up, I do think, however, that this tension between the individual and the community is not just about how much work and effort and time and commitment we're willing to put in. It's also about the emotional balance between our needs and the community's needs. So what I'm trying to do is lift up trends that are prevalent not only in our denomination, but in religious communities all across the country, and I think in our culture at large. And I ask you to think about what of what I'm saying does resonate with you. I know some of it speaks to me more than I wish it did. Perhaps that will be true for some of you as well. But if not, don't assume I'm painting everyone with one brush here. It's funny in a way. I think religious communities are about the most communally focused communities that there are, short of utopian communities. I mean, we are all about community. If you ask anybody here, what's the most important thing to you about this fellowship? What's the first thing most of you are going to say? The community. I know this because when I first came, I went and visited everybody and asked them that question. And you all said the same thing. So I know community is central to our life together. At the same time, though, we live in a culture, and Unitarian Universalism, I think, is a subculture that has a particularly strong bent in this direction. We live in a culture that insists on a very high level of personal freedom. And so we may resent when a community begins to make demands on us. We don't want to have to meet high expectations about attendance, say, or financial support, or being on time and sitting down and listening quietly when the prelude starts. Dare I say it? I remember years ago, and this is many years ago, at least 20 years ago, I saw an ad for Unitarian Universalism. And I don't remember where I saw it, whether it was in the UU World or some smaller, more fringe publication. But I saw an ad that read something like, "Are you looking for a religion that doesn't crucify you for missing church on Sunday?" It took me a while to figure out why I was so offended by that ad. I knew right away that part of it was the imagery they used. Now, at the time, I was far outside of the Christian tradition, but the use of the crucifixion as a vehicle for a joke still went too far for me. And I wrote to express my concern that such an approach really flew in the face of our ideal of stated respect for other religious traditions. But then I realized that almost as offensive to me was the fact that they were trying to sell Unitarian Universalism by emphasizing how little we ask of our members. What does that say about us? Join a church that doesn't care whether you show up or not. Do I want to be